The first gunshot cracked the morning air like a curse, echoing across the sunlit valley just as the girl realized the man riding toward her was the one her father had sworn to kill. Dust lifted in golden spirals, horses scattered, and in that blinding daylight moment, her heart made a choice that would tear an entire frontier town apart. By sunset, the Wild West would no longer remember her as a sheriff's daughter, but as the woman who dared to love the enemy. Before the story pulls you any deeper into its dust and fire, take a moment right now and let me know you're here. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us love can change even the hardest hearts, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Wave. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Her name was Maribel Hawthorne, and every morning she woke to sunlight spilling over the wooden floors of her father's house, the smell of dry grass and horse sweat drifting in through open windows. This was a daytime land, harsh and honest, where secrets were difficult to hide because the sun exposed everything. Her father, Sheriff Alden Hawthorne, ruled the town of Red Willow with iron resolve, and his greatest enemy was a man named Silas Crow, an outlaw whose name carried fear like a shadow at noon. Silas had robbed trains, broken alliances, and once humiliated the sheriff by escaping capture in front of the whole town. To Alden Hawthorne, Silas Crow was not a man but a stain that needed erasing. To Maribel, until that day, he had only been a rumor shaped by hatred. The first time she saw Silas Crow clearly, it was broad daylight on the open trail near the Cottonwood Ridge. He was wounded, slumped over his saddle, blood darkening his shirt under the merciless sun. He did not look like a legend then. He looked human, exhausted, and dangerously alone. Maribel should have turned away, should have ridden back to town and warned her father, but something in the stillness of that moment held her there. The land was quiet except for cicadas and the slow creak of leather. She offered water with trembling hands, expecting violence, but received only a look of surprise and gratitude. In that daylight exchange, something shifted inside her, as if the truth had stepped out from behind the stories. Maribel began to see the cracks in the world she thought she knew. Her father's hatred had shaped her childhood, but she had never questioned it until she saw Silas as a man bleeding under the sun rather than a monster hiding in the dark. Over the following weeks, their paths crossed again and again by chance or fate, always under open skies, always in daylight where lies were harder to keep. She learned that Silas had been driven into outlaw life by betrayal and loss, that he had once tried to live straight before the world closed its fists around him. She learned that kindness, even in small doses, could disarm a man more effectively than a gun. The town of Red Willow pulsed with tension as the sun rose and set each day. Sheriff Hawthorne grew more determined, organizing posses and sharpening his vendetta. He spoke of justice, but his eyes burned with something darker, something personal. Maribel felt torn between loyalty and truth, between the father who raised her and the man who had shown her a gentler side of a brutal world. Each day, the sun seemed to hang longer in the sky, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Silas tried to keep his distance, knowing the danger she was in, knowing what loving him would cost her. But daylight meetings turned into shared silences, shared understandings, and eventually a love that neither of them planned. It was not the kind of love born in shadows, it grew openly, painfully, under the same sun that watched over their enemies. Maribel began to challenge her father's stories, asking careful questions, noticing how the loss sometimes crushed the innocent while claiming righteousness. Sheriff Hawthorne saw the change in her eyes and mistook it for defiance rather than awakening. The breaking point came on a blazing afternoon when the sheriff finally tracked Silas to the abandoned sawmill outside town. The posses gathered, rifles gleaming in the sun, dust rising like smoke. Maribel rode hard, heart pounding, knowing what was coming and knowing she could not stay silent. When she reached the sawmill, the world seemed suspended in harsh light, every flaw visible. She stood between her father and the man he hated, her voice shaking but her resolve unbreakable. In that moment, the Wild West watched a daughter choose truth over blood, compassion over vengeance. What followed shocked everyone. Silas did not run. He laid down his weapon in full daylight, trusting Maribel's faith more than his own survival instincts. The townspeople, expecting blood, saw instead restraint. Sheriff Hawthorne, confronted with his daughter's tears and the quiet dignity of his enemy, hesitated for the first time in years. The sun beat down on them all, unforgiving, illuminating every choice. In that pause, the town began to see Silas not as a legend but as a man willing to face judgment honestly. The trial that followed was not held in darkness or secrecy. It took place in the open, with the community present, under the same sky that had witnessed so much pain. Stories surfaced of corruption, of deals gone wrong, of how Silas had been pushed beyond the edges of lawful society. Witnesses spoke, truths unraveled, and the narrative the sheriff had clung to began to crumble. Maribel stood tall throughout it all, bearing the weight of stares and whispers, her courage fueled by the belief that kindness could rewrite even the harshest stories. In the end, Silas Crow was not celebrated, but he was spared. His sentence was work, restitution, and a chance to rebuild under watchful eyes. It was not freedom, but it was hope. Sheriff Hawthorne stepped down months later, a quieter man, his certainty replaced by reflection. He never fully forgave Silas, but he learned to see his daughter as her own person, guided by conscience rather than fear. Red Willow changed slowly, like land healing after fire, but it changed nonetheless. Maribel and Silas did not ride off into an easy sunset. Their days were filled with labor, judgment, and rebuilding trust. But they faced each morning together, under clear skies, proving that love born in daylight can endure scrutiny. The Wild West remembered their story not as a scandal, but as a turning point, a reminder that even in the hardest places, humanity can surface. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you that forgiveness and courage can reshape even the most unforgiving worlds, please take a moment now to like the video, share it, and let your support ripple outward. Stories like this live through your hearts. Before the very last moment, I have one special request for you. Please comment below and tell us what this story made you feel, or who it reminded you of. As the sun set on Red Willow one final time in this tale, it did not feel like an ending, but a beginning. A reminder that love can stand in the open, that kindness can face hatred head-on, and that sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is choose compassion when the whole world expects revenge.